like to know how you can study for the GED test on your own without taking a class, and how to do it as quickly as possible, and how to do it without spending a whole lot of money. Well, that's what I'm going to tell you in this video. I'm going to be covering what resources to use and some best practices for getting the test done as quickly as possible. For those that don't know me, if you're new around here, my name's Parker. I'm the founder of TestPrepChampions.com, and if you're a GED test taker, please consider just subscribing to my channel. I post new videos often to help everybody who's taking the GED pass and blow their test away with high scores, so you don't want to miss any of those videos. Now, I'm responding to a question here that I was asked from Leah, and Leah asked, can you take the GED test on your own? And so that's what I'm going to respond. So I'm going to start off by discussing some resources here, and I'm going to avoid plugging my own products here in this video. So if you want to learn about those, you can go on my website, testprepchampions.com. You can do that. I'm going to not talk about them here in this video, so I just want to get that out of the way. But the first thing that I recommend doing is just grabbing a book like this by Kaplan, and Kaplan's not the only company that's got books out there, obviously, but I usually recommend Kaplan for two reasons. Number one, I've heard a lot of students use Kaplan. It seems like they use that more than any other resource, so it is quite popular, and I've heard very good reviews, and students that I've worked with, it's been helpful for them. And another reason why I recommend Kaplan is just because that's what I have the most experience with as far as helping students pass the GED. So this is just what I had on hand. I think this might be, I don't think this is the most up-to-date version, but you'll want to grab the most up-to-date version. You can get it on Amazon.com for fairly cheap. I think I got this one. This was $30, but you might be able to find it a little bit cheaper. But so you'll want to budget maybe $15 to $30 to grab a resource like this. That's what I recommend. And the reason why I think every GED test taker should get a book like this is just because, well, at least with the Kaplan, it comes with 2 full-length practice tests, and you get 1 practice test online, and it covers what you need to know for every section: the reasoning through language arts, the mathematical reasoning, and the science and social studies. So you'll want to get a book like this if you're studying on your own, because it's going to give you some direction. And so how you'll do it, I'm just going to show you for the math section. For example, what you would do is you see how they have like a lesson written here, kind of like a textbook. So they've got, this is fractions and decimal equivalency. So just to show you an example, they've got this little lesson here, and then after the lesson, they've got some practice problems here. Okay, so what you would do is you'd read this lesson, and if that's not making sense to you, if you find that you're having trouble with that concept, what I would do is just go on YouTube and just put in a search term like whatever the topic is. Like here, it's decimals and fractions, or fraction and decimal equivalence. So you can just plug that into YouTube, and you can find some great, awesome videos, I'm sure. Just watch them, check those out, watch a couple videos, and hopefully that will clarify it. And so then you'll want to work through those practice problems, and I'll explain why that's so crucial later on in the video, but you'll want to work through those practice problems and get a notebook and jot some notes down in your notebook, and then you're done. You can move on to the next section. So it depends how good you are with the math, how fast you can get through the math section, really, but that's what I recommend you do if you're self-studying. Just use like a Kaplan book and go through all of those lessons and work on those practice problems. If you do all of that, then the next thing that you want to do before you take the actual test is you'll want to get an official practice test. Now, any kind of practice test that you can do are good, like the ones in the Kaplan book. I would do those. There's tons of practice tests out there online, okay? There's a lot of good resources, but you'll want to spend the $6 to get the practice test for each section. So I would definitely budget that for the 4 sections. You'll want to spend the $6 a practice test. That's really probably the most important thing out of this whole video, is to spend the money on those practice tests when you're ready. I don't usually recommend doing it right off the bat before you've studied it all, because if you haven't prepared at all, you might bomb the practice test, and so then all it's going to tell you is that you need to study more, right? And so I don't usually recommend starting off just with a practice test, but you will want to do a practice test, okay, an official practice test, preferably closer to the end of your studying. And then that's going to give you a score report that's usually a pretty good indication of how you're going to do on the real thing. So if it tells you that you're likely to pass, okay, you should be in good shape. Now, obviously, you want to go review anything that you're having trouble with to make sure that you fill in those gaps before you go. But if you score well on your practice tests, usually you're going to be in good shape, okay? So that's what I recommend that you do for the math section. Now, another section that you should use the book for is really the language arts and the reading and writing section, because to learn those grammar rules and to learn that writing, okay, they'll teach you the stuff in this book here. The English section and the writing section, whatever you want to call it, is probably, that's one of the harder ones to do by yourself if you're not a strong writer, just because you can't really get any feedback on your writing unless you ask a tutor or ask somebody to help you, okay? So as like a math, for example, if you're working on a math problem, you can just go look in the back of the book and see if it's right. But for essay writing, no one's going to be able to check your work for you. So you're going to have to kind of be your own, really be your own best advocate, and really be hard on yourself to make sure when you're grading your own essays to really make sure that you're doing a good job of being hard on yourself and not just giving yourself a free pass on that. So that's what I would do. Now, of course, they've also got the social studies and the sciences section in here as well. So there's a lot of good information out there to learn about social studies. Like, for example, if you learn about some of the history stuff, I think like the Constitution, learning how the government works and how that's set up. Same with the sciences. There's a lot of really, really helpful scientific principles that you learn from this textbook. But it just kind of depends on where you're at. So for those two sections, the tests are primarily reading comprehension. It's primarily going to be reading passages, and they'll show you diagrams and charts, and you'll have to know how to analyze that data. So probably the most important thing you can do is just practice. Just practice the reading the passages and answering questions, which you'll get out of this book. Or a similar book. And then, as always, for those sections too, you'll want to definitely go on there and go to the official GED testing website. I'll put a link down below to that. And so you'll want to definitely try a $6 practice test for each test. I would not recommend going into the real test and scheduling that cold without having done those practice tests. So that's another thing. Whenever you do want to schedule that real test, you just go through the GED official website and do it. And you'll find a testing center near you, which they'll show you the locations online. And whenever you're ready, whenever you want to, you can do it. And so when it goes to studying, picking study materials, like I said, I would pick like a big general resource like this, and then I would start very broad and then get more specific. So, like, for example, for the math section, there's all kinds of books out there. Like, you can get books just on fractions, books just on decimals, books that just cover the geometry, books that just cover word problems, right? They're out there, okay? And all those resources are awesome and great, but you might not need them. So I wouldn't recommend, as you first start your studying, just buying a big stack of math practice books. I would stick to like a general resource like this for starting out. It's gonna keep more money in your pocketbook, so you're not gonna have to go buy 20 different things. And also, you might not need them. So what I would do is what I mean by start broad. So start with something that covers the math section very broadly, and then if you find topics that you're really struggling with, like let's say it's word problems, you're just having a really hard time with understanding word problems, okay, then what you can do is you can go on Amazon, or you go to your local bookstore, whatever you want to do, or just Google it. You don't have to use Amazon. Wherever you shop for books, you can find all kinds of books that are going to cover word problems more in depth and give you a lot more practice problems. And if you're really struggling with word problems, that's what I would recommend. Okay, but the point is that you don't necessarily need to start off your studying by going out and buying a book about word problems and a book about fractions and a book about this, a book about that. Just start off with something very broad that's going to give you a general overview. I mean, this should have everything that you need to know in it for the math section. Okay, but like I said, if you find weak points that you're having a lot of trouble with, okay, you can go on YouTube and find some free content, and if that's still not helping, then I would target down on those by getting those other specific books, but you don't necessarily have to go buy a big stack of them to start off with. So other than really buying like a big general book like Kaplan and then you can use free resources to supplement. Of course, YouTube is huge for all kinds of math videos. You can also just do Google search. There's good information out there on the web. And then also you'll want to spend $6 for all of those practice tests for each section I would do. And then however much it costs for you to sign up and take the test. So those should be your costs for each section. You're going to have to pay for each section. But another decision that you'll have to make as a self-studier for the GED test is whether to pay for online courses or to use free material. Now, like I said, I would start off with free stuff just for the sake of your pocketbook, right? But there's a lot of really awesome free stuff out there, and a lot of people do that. Like they'll get like a big book like the Kaplan or something, and they'll supplement it with free math videos, for example. Then they'll take that practice test, and they're going to be good. Okay. However, that being said, okay, the main advantage of paying for a GED course or paying for other GED prep books is that a lot of the times you're going to get everything all packaged together, all put together in like a nice package. So, for example, like Khan Academy or other YouTube math channels, there's some really, really, really awesome YouTube math channels that cover all the math that you would ever need to know, but a lot of it's just general math videos. They're not necessarily aimed for the GED test takers. Like, for example, there might be videos on algebra out there that are aimed at high school algebra classes or middle school algebra classes. They're not necessarily targeted just towards the GED. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because a lot of that stuff you need to know, but some of it's overkill and some of it might not actually cover everything that you do need to know for the GED test. It just varies. So with paid products, the one advantage is that you're going to, most of the time, if it's a quality resource, you're going to get exactly, it's going to be tailored just to the GED test takers. If it's a GED material, it's not going to, be talking about, targeted towards other test takers or towards high school or middle school. It's going to be tailored just to GED, and it's also, everything will be put together for you in a nice, clean package, unlike, on YouTube, you might find a math video about circles, then you got to go find a math video about this and a math video about that. And, I've seen Khan Academy math playlists for the GED test that are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos long. And if you watch all those videos, you're going to learn the stuff. Don't get me wrong, that's great information, but my point is just that it might take a lot of time to make decisions about which videos are going to be worth your time for the test. Even though people have put big playlists together, I recommend checking those out to start off with. But if you just want to get right to the point and just pass as quickly as possible, you'll want to consider some paid courses, some paid resources. Those aren't a bad thing, so don't be afraid to do that, especially if you don't learn well from books and you like video a lot better. That's always an option to consider paid courses. So I'm not going to mention any paid courses here, but I'm not going to name any names. But if you want some information on that, you can always let me know. So with that being said, let me see what else I want to talk about. Oh, so the main important thing, the number one factor of how fast you can get through the GED, though, as a test taker, okay, who's not taking a formal course or even really doing an online prep course, if you're doing it yourself, okay, the number one thing is really, it's going to be your personal effectiveness. Largely, it's going to be how quickly you can, the factor that's going to affect how quickly you can pass the sections on the test is going to be largely based on your personal effectiveness, okay? You really got to be a self-starter here, because in high school, for example, you're going to be sitting in class all day. The teachers are going to be on your back for the most part. You're going to know when everything's due. You're going to have due dates and deadlines. But when you're self-studying for the GED test, you're not going to have those deadlines, okay? It's going to be done primarily by yourself. So I really recommend picking a goal date for each of the sections. Okay, now how long it's going to take you to pass all the sections, that's a guessing game. That can be tricky. It's going to depend on certain factors, like how some people, it just takes them a while to learn the material. It depends on how much time you'll have available to study. But I would definitely go pick a date. That's one of the first things that you should do. Get out your calendar and go pick a date for the math section. Pick a date for when you're going to do the reading section. Okay, give yourself plenty of time if you want. You could probably do it over a 3-month period. Some people do it in 2 weeks. Okay, some people need more time. Some people do it in 1 week, but some people, it takes them a whole year to go through all the sections. It just depends on you, and it depends on where you're at. But I would go set those dates. I would just go pick a date, and you don't have to necessarily register at that date, but just put it on your calendar, okay, your date. And you're going to try to hold yourself accountable for that deadline. If you want to be really conservative about it, give yourself a couple months. Pick a date 3 months from now. That's the date when I want to have all 4 sections of the GED test done. Write that on your calendar, okay? It's up to you. If you want to go through it as fast as you can pick a date 3 weeks from now, okay? But you want to try to hold yourself accountable for that deadline, because like I said, you're not going to actually have that, pressure coming from your teachers and coming from your high school anymore. It's all on you. So you got to put that pressure on yourself. And the best way to do that is to even go as far sometimes as to just schedule that date. Schedule a date, go on the website and actually pay money, go schedule a date for when you want to take the test, and then you're going to have to be ready by that date. And of course, if you're not ready by that date, you can either, if you're not ready by that date, then it's okay. You can either cancel the test or whatever, or just don't schedule it if that date comes up and you're not feeling ready, okay? Because you're kind of guessing at the date when you do that. When you pick a date to have the sections done by, you're essentially guessing. All right, but that is really important. So another thing is to really mark out time on your calendar and plan time for how you're going to get through it. So that's the most important thing for self-studying, is to have a plan, and I would put that plan in writing somehow. So for example, this is what I use this personally. I think that it says on the back, JStory. I guess you go on like www.jstory.co if you want to get this. I don't know. I mean, I'm not really necessarily plugging this. I'm just using this as an example of how I manage my time. But see how this shows like the days through the week, Monday through Sunday. So like, for example, what you can do is, get something like this or just use your calendar. Okay, Monday, I'm going to do math lessons 1 through 3 out of my Kaplan book. Tuesday, I'm going to do math lessons 4 through 7 out of my Kaplan book. Okay, Wednesday, I'm going to do this. Thursday I'm going to do this, blah, blah, blah. So like, you make a plan for when you're going to have all that stuff reviewed from your book. And then after a couple weeks, okay, let's say that you've gotten through all of the lessons in your prep book, the next step would be to do the practice tests in your prep book, do the practice test at the official testing website. And if you're passing that official practice test, then you should be in good shape. So, and the main thing is to really be consistent too. So have that calendar, pick that date, and then once you've got the general date for when you're going to get each section done by, you want to start making plans. So you can plan weeks in advance. Like you can plan what you're going to do weeks in advance, just like I just showed you. Break it down. Look at the table of contents. Look at the number of lessons that you have to do, like for the math, for example. Look at all those lessons, and it depends on how fast you can get through it. Don't rush it. Make sure that you understand everything. But if you can get through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lessons in a day, then you're moving along. But that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. How much time should you spend studying per day? So largely this is going to depend on your schedule. So if you're working full-time, or if you're working part-time, or if you're not working right now, okay, it's going to depend also if you've got family obligations or other things going on, okay? So not everyone's going to have the same amount of time to study every day. But the key is to really be consistent, okay? If you've got 20 minutes to study every day, spend that 20 minutes studying. You're not going to get there as fast as you would, obviously, if you had 2 hours to study every day, but if that's all you have, that's all you have, okay? Make sure that you use that time wisely, however much time it is, okay? And so I wouldn't recommend you doing more than, say, 3 hours of studying on most days. If there's, say you've got a big test coming up and you just want to take a Saturday and just sit there and spend the whole day pretty much just reviewing and reviewing and reviewing, then by all means go do that, okay? That might work for you, that might get you through faster, but I wouldn't recommend on most days at least. I would try to keep your studying. I would shoot for 1 to 3 hours a day. I think if you're really productive and you're really focused, then 1 to 3 hours a day is going to be pretty good. If you do that consistently for a couple weeks, then you should be able to get through most of the material in this book for all the sections, okay? Like I said, don't rush. If you're having trouble with something, slow down, get extra help on that. But really, that's the key, is to be consistent, all right? If you study 1 to 3 hours a day for a couple weeks, you're going to be very far along. That's a big reason why people just don't get anywhere a lot of the time when they're GED studying, is that they just can't, they're not effective with what they're doing. They're not efficient, okay? So you really got to be focused in your studying. When I talk about studying, it's got to be focused studying, right? So it's got to be studying where you've got your phone on silent or preferably off and out of sight. You've got all the tabs in your computer that aren't relevant to what you're doing. Click out of those. Okay, you want to, I wouldn't play any kind of study music or anything like that. Some people say it helps them. Maybe it'll help you, I don't know, try it out, but I wouldn't recommend that. Study in a quiet place, clear everything off, organize what's going on around you, try to get everything off of your desk that doesn't need to be there, and open the book, get a notebook out, and work on practice problems or work on whatever you want to do that day, but try to do it without distractions, okay? Because if you're all over the place, like a lot of people, they sit down and they say, okay, I'm going to study, and then 2 seconds later they get up and go get a drink of water, then they're going to the bathroom, and then they're trying to pick a song to listen to study with, and then they're checking their phone's going off every 2 seconds. They've got all these texts, and then they've got all these notifications from social media, and they've got all these tabs open, and so they sit there for an hour, but out of that whole hour, they've spent maybe 10 minutes actually studying. And that's why a lot of people don't make progress. So you got to close out all of that stuff and really focus 100% of your attention on what you're doing, and you'll get there faster. You really will. People are amazed once they make this difference. It really will be amazing if you're not used to studying like this. But clear your head of all distractions. Just try to sit there and just tell yourself, I got to clear my head right now. Everything that's going on in your life, just put it on a shelf whenever you study for the GED, and you sit there and give your full attention to what you're doing at hand, and you're going to get there really fast. And so one good way to do this is to study in different intervals. Okay, so there's a technique called the Pomodoro technique, or I don't know how you pronounce it, and the basic idea is that you study for 25 minutes, take a quick 5 to 10 minute break, study for another 25 minutes, take a 5 to 10 minute break, then you study for another 25 minutes, and then you take a longer break after that. And the basic idea is that during those study sessions when you're actually studying, you want to spend 100% of your focus just on your studying. You don't want to be looking at anything else, any distractions. You spend all that time studying. So 25 minutes of hardcore focused studying, okay, that you clear your mind and you do that. Okay, you get in that habit of doing that, and then you take a 5 minute break, then you can go do whatever you want. You take 5 minutes to go fill your water bottle, go do whatever you need to do, check your phones, check those notifications, okay, and then we'll get right back to it for another 25 minutes, okay? Take a 5 minute break, check your phone, do whatever you got to do, get back to it another 25 minutes, okay? And then eventually, as you build up your attention span and as you get used to doing this, you can do it longer. You can do 50 minutes, then take a 10 minute break. 50 minutes, take a 10 minute break. I wouldn't go too much longer than an hour or an hour and a half without taking a break, just because you don't want to burn out, and you don't want to, yeah, you need to give yourself a break every now and then. But so that's another way to be effective with your studying. And another point is active studying. So if you really want to get through your studying faster, you got to study actively, not passively. As a general rule of thumb, the more effort that you put into your studying, the more effortful it is, the faster you're going to learn the material. Okay, so when I talk about active study methods, I'm talking about things like practice problems and practice tests. If you want to get through faster than all your friends or whoever else is taking the GED with you, okay, you've got to spend most of your time doing practice problems. And, you know, just reading the book, it's not going to do it for you. It won't most of the time. Maybe you'll pass that way. I'd be surprised, though, but you could. You never know, but I wouldn't risk it. So, you know, you want to read those passages and then work on all those practice problems. The majority of your time should be spent working on those practice problems and working on practice tests, practice material. You're gonna fly. You're gonna, you know, at first it's gonna be really hard to do. Okay, at first some of the problems might be very daunting, but you got to stick with those tough problems too. I mean, a big part of learning math. It doesn't matter how smart you are, what your math background is. Okay, the big part of learning math is trying problems, getting stuck, getting confused, and then trying to figure out how to get unstuck. So stuff that, and then once you do that, once you get something that's confusing for you, once it really sticks, you're going to have it for a long time. It's going to stick in your head. You're not, for the most part, you're not going to have to keep reviewing it a million times. But you got to stick with those problems. You got to find the problems, work on problems that are hard, work on problems that are going to challenge you. When you get stuck, go back into the book, get on YouTube, figure out how to do it. Okay, and every time that you do that, it's like lifting weights. You're going to keep strengthening that muscle memory, so to speak. All right. And so another thing you can do is to test that you really understand something is to see if you can teach it to somebody else. So for example, if you learn how to find the slope and do slope calculations, you could find somebody else and teach to them in your own words. Put all the books away, get out a blank sheet of paper, and practice teaching it to them in your own words. And if you don't have anyone to study with, that's fine. Just talk to the wall or talk to an imaginary class. Pretend you're giving a lecture and just teach how to do that technique. And that's going to help stick it in your brain a lot faster. And the other technique I would use is spaced repetition. Space out your studying. That's why I don't recommend necessarily doing more than an hour or 3 hours a day, because your brain can only take in so much at a time. Okay, your brain can't process that much stuff trying to learn that much new stuff at a time. And after a while you can, after you get in the habit, but at first it's really hard. So, you know, you want to limit your studying to a couple hours a day of hardcore focused studying during that time. And you space your studying out, you know, you do this for a couple weeks, a little bit at a time every single day. Then, you know, you're going to remember it a lot better than if you just sit there and you do 10 hours of studying in one day. Okay. Think about it instead. If you study 2 hours a day for 5 days in a row, that's 10 hours of studying, and you're probably going to remember it a lot better than you would have if you did 10 hours in one day. So that's something else to keep in mind. And lastly, I just wanted to mention there are resources out there like Quora.com, which you mentioned here, so right on. Quora is awesome. You can ask me a question anytime on Quora. Probably the best resource, it is small. I wish it was more active than what it was. Probably the most active resource on the internet is Reddit, the GED subreddit on Reddit.com. You can ask people questions. People are active on it. You'll get responses pretty fast most of the time. So that's a good sense of community. So I'd recommend, I don't know if you're a Redditor or not, but you can always sign up and you can go check that out. Get help, talk to other people, read other people's experiences. I think it's really helpful for students to go on there. And also there's Chegg.com and there's Wyzant.com. Those are both websites where you can find tutoring. So if you ever need a tutor or you ever need help, you can always go on Chegg or go on Wyzant pretty much 24 hours a day and you can find a tutor. You're going to have to pay for it, but you know, if you've just got a couple questions that are pressing and you can't figure them out on your own, don't hesitate to do that. So okay, so just to kind of summarize everything I just said, and I want to make some concluding remarks here, you know, I would start off, if you're self-studying on your own, you want to get a big prep book, like something like a Kaplan. That's not the only resource you can use. There's others out there. I just like Kaplan because that's what most students that I've worked with use. That's what I'm most familiar with. It doesn't have to be Kaplan though. You spend maybe 20, 30 bucks. I would try to get the most recent up-to-date version, but they don't change too much year to year. So if you're really pressed for money, you can pick like an older version, like maybe like a 2017 version, 2018 version. You might save some money, but it's not going to be too much different, but I would try to get the most up-to-date version if you can. And they've also got online stuff too you can do. So you want to get a material like that, and then you'll also want to supplement with free videos online wherever you can find them. And so if you're moving along with your studying and you just feel like you're starting to get stuck though and you're not moving along and you're just having trouble kind of going through YouTube and sorting through all the craziness of finding videos specifically for the GED and finding playlists and stuff that are going to be realistic to use for the GED, then there's always paid course options out there. You can do paid courses, and I think that the biggest benefit is that it's all packaged together nicely if it's a quality course. So there's that. And then you want to always take those GED official practice tests, the GED Ready practice tests. Make sure you do those. Go on the website, you can sign up for those. And then the other thing is just remember to be a self-starter. Just set goals, set dates, and do focused studying. Use those active study techniques, all those practice problems, and you want to try to explain things in your own words whenever you want to really make sure that you've got something that's a good test if you've understood it or not, is if you can explain it in your own words in such a way that someone else could understand it. Try to space your studying out over time, and then check out, there's tutoring resources out there on the website too if you want to use those. So I'm Parker from TestPrepChampions.com. I really hope this video was helpful for you. Let me know if you have any other questions. Give it a thumbs up, please, if you found it helpful, and that way I'll know to keep making more content like this. So good luck to everybody on your studying, and thanks for the question.